Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everybody to Shelfside Spurs Show. No Tottenham game this week. Transfer window ins and outs to talk about. We thought we'd bring you a special guest. We've announced it obviously on Twitter and whatnot. As you can see, the panel this week we've got Rez, Nick, Alan. Do you want to say hello, guys?
Good evening.
Hello, guys.
I'm sure everyone watching, although regular viewers of ours don't really want to listen to us wittering on for too long, as we've got a special guest waiting backstage. So without further ado, we've got a little bit of branding to welcome him in with. So Rez, if you could, I'll just bring up the video, and then if you could bring Micky in whilst I do this. So,
absolutely.
I've just ruined who the surprise guest is, and if you didn't know already from the title of the show.
You did.
And everyone's also asking who's Nick.
Start again. Pretend you don't know the title of today's show, and I didn't mention Micky at all. And
we haven't been plugging it for a week, and you can't read and stuff like that. Yeah.
And we've got a special guest coming, so here it is. The surprise is upon us. Here he is, everybody, the one and only. Let's put him centre middle at the top there. There we go. Let's move him up to the middle there. There we go. Whoops, he's come back again. You want to stay bottom left, do you, Micky?
No, I did it.
I tell you what, guys. I was a very pretty 16-year-old, wasn't I?
That hair there. Loving it. Well, I bet you had all the ladies, Micky.
Mainly because I was a footballer.
Well, that head of hair, man. You'd have gone down well today. You see the youths of today, or the 18, 19-year-olds, they've all got that curly hair now, haven't they?
Yeah, they're all trying to copy me. Absolutely
are, mate. Absolutely are. So, Micky, thanks for joining us today. Complete honour is all ours. Do you want to say hello to everyone, Micky, everyone?
Good evening, Micky. Thanks for coming.
I think they're all muted and stuff.
Alan was.
Good
Alan
evening,
was,
Mr. Hazard.
Very, very formal there. Good. Micky, at the beginning of every show, I've got a little book my brother gave me a few years ago. It's got a famous Spurs event for every day of the year. So there's a couple of events here, and I think you might have been involved certainly with one of them, if not both of them. So we've got February 1986 or February 1985. So the February 1986 one, you might have left by this stage, but you might not. Let's read it out. With English teams banned from Europe, clubs were entered into a makeshift competition called the Screen Sport Super Cup. Spurs reached the semi-finals, but the fans gave the competition a massive thumbs down. Only 7,000 fans attended the first leg clash with Everton, which ended 0-0, and the Toffees took the second leg 3-1 at Goodison Park to progress to the final against Liverpool. The competition, like numerous others that had been dreamed up over the years, died after just one season with the public apathy and the fact there was no Wembley final to aim for, the main reason for its demise. Were you involved in that one, Micky, or had you gone by that?
No, wasn't involved in that one. I'd left at that point.
Were Chelsea involved in that one, or?
I know that when the European ban started, that the Chelsea chairman introduced a cup called the Simod Cup and the Zenith Data Systems Cup and the full Members Cup.
Yeah.
I happened to win that 2 or 3 times.
I remember the Simod Cup. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I won that. I couldn't tell you where my medals are. Probably in the bin, to be honest. But I don't remember the one you're talking about.
The second one, here we go. So February '95, you were at the club at the time.
Yeah.
Tottenham Hotspur beat eventual Premier League champions Blackburn Rovers 3-1 at White Hart Lane, with soon-to-be Spurs midfielder Tim Sherwood getting the visitors' reply goal. Jurgen Klinsmann scored his 18th goal of the season, with Darren Anderton bagging his 4th of the campaign. Nick Barmby sealed victory for Spurs with his 8th goal in all competitions, rounding off a fine performance for Jerry Francis's team.
Can't remember
Any
the
memories?
game.
Nah,
No,
maybe not.
Can't remember the game at all, which is unusual for me. Maybe I left just prior to it. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Regular viewers will know that when we get a new guest on, we do a feature which we like to call White Hart Memory Lane. Let's just put up the banner down the bottom here for Mickey. There we go. Whoops. White Hart Memory Lane with Mickey. Is that you, Rez, pressing the button as well? No? So there we go. If you look at my ticker down the bottom there, this is White Hart Memory Lane with Micky Hazard. Mickey, don't worry, the questions aren't too intense, and let's get going. So, question 1. Let's bring you up here. Who scouted and signed you for Spurs, and did you know they were watching you? Do you remember any particular game when you knew they were watching and you thought I'd played well there?
Yeah, very difficult not to know the guy, Ken Pedeston. Do I remember a game that he attended? He actually attended every single game I ever played in, for school, for town, and for the county. He was there non-stop from about the age of 11. He befriended my dad. He became good friends with the family. He used to invite me and my dad over there every Sunday for Sunday dinner and a bit of extra training with him, which I hated, by the way. Because while I was training with him, I was missing playing for my club side. But Ken Pedeston was that man, and a great guy. And obviously the reason why I'm here tonight, I suppose.
Did it give you a boost to know that he was watching, or were you just playing sort of with a free abandon as a kid anyway?
I think that I tended to try to play every game that I played. I tried to go into it with the same mentality that to play well, I suppose, to express myself. My dad told me to show the skills and passes and score goals, etc. And then, of course, when I joined Spurs as a schoolboy at the age of 14, obviously the philosophies that they instilled in us was pretty much what my dad had already instilled in me, was to go out onto the pitch and show what you've got. No good being so talented and so gifted and skillful, being able to dribble and pass and do tricks or whatever, and then going out on the pitch and not showing them. It was much easier to do it at school, because obviously you were supposedly so far ahead of the rest, even at a very young age. That's why you're scouted.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you get to the top, it's much more difficult, because everybody's there for a reason, because they're very good players too. And even the ones that are not maybe technically so good, they're very good at working and tackling and chasing. So much harder to play with a free spirit right at the very top than it is when you're at school.
It was destiny then for you and Tottenham to meet. Your football philosophies definitely melted together, didn't they? Yeah,
exactly. My football philosophies were maybe in many ways my biggest success, but also some of my downfalls too, because I believed there was only one way to play the game. I believed that from when I was a kid. The beautiful way, the beautiful game, played with flair and creativity, and with a passion and desire to win. To this day, I still stand by it all, and I still believe that if any team plays with those ingredients, then they're likely to be the most successful team. So I make no apologies for having those beliefs, and luckily for me, that when I did arrive at Spurs, the very things that I believed in is what Spurs inbred into me. So it was a sort of an hand fitting into a glove perfectly. Really, we were the perfect fit.
Did you ever talk to your dad about where he sort of got those philosophies from? You say you picked them up from your dad.
Well, yeah, no. Every Sunday morning when I was young, without fail, obviously, I presume because it was a weekend and nobody was at school, nobody worked. But me and my brothers or my sisters, we used to go and sit on mum and dad's bed every Sunday morning. And my dad would play games with us, or, he would ask us the capitals of the world or things like that. And then he'd talk about his football heroes. And his was Len Shackleton. I don't know if you've ever heard of Len Shackleton.
Yeah.
His nickname was Shaq. He was the Clown Prince of Sunderland. And, he absolutely, supposedly unbelievable player. And my dad used to tell me stories about how great, how skillful he was, how tricky he was, and some of the things that he used to do. One of the things that he told me, I've got to be honest with you here, I'll tell you the story about what my dad told about Shaq. And I've practiced this skill from being the age of 8, 9, when my dad told me about it, right through to today. And I've still never, ever mastered it. To this day, that's how good he was. And he used to say to me, son, he said, Len Shackleton was that good. He used to take a corner and he'd sprint into the middle and head it into the top corner. And I've been trying for years to do it, but I've never mastered it yet.
You need a bit of assistance from the wind, a gale force wind, don't you?
But I'll keep trying until the day I die.
Dear, brilliant stuff. So the second question then, when you first arrived at Spurs as a youth and apprentice, when you first sort of rocked up at the training ground and stuff, were you starstruck by any of the players? Who were you most taken with?
Well, as a 14-year-old schoolboy, before I became full-time, I got to train with the first team. When I was coming down from Sunderland, obviously they were keen to get me to sign for Spurs. So I used to train with the first team, and then in the afternoon I'd go back and watch them training in the gym. And there was this one particular youngster who was I was 14, he was about 17 at the time. And I remember going back home to Sunderland and seeing my best friend at school when I got back. And I said to my friend Kevin, I said, Kevin, I have just seen the best footballer I've ever seen. I said, I've never seen anybody this gifted in all my life. I suppose you've all guessed who I mean. It was Glenn Hoddle.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was not overawed. I trained with them. I was not overawed with any of them. Even though I'd only seen them on TV, but from spending that period training with them, training with Glenn Hoddle, it almost made me overawed every time I was in Glenn's company. In fact, I played golf with Glenn today quite a lot. Every time I play with him, I get a bit nervous because he was my schoolboy hero. I don't know if any of you have ever played golf with your schoolboy hero. I was lucky enough.
No, you walked past me.
Football with him. I got to be managed by him, and I get to play golf with him. And to this day, I still feel a bit nervous. Nervous is maybe the wrong word, but in awe. I feel a bit in awe of him when I'm in his company. I tell him as well. Yeah. Like when I'm standing on the first tee. Glenn's hit his shot and he's hit it into the bunker. And I'm standing there thinking, this is going to be an easy one to win now. And what do? I put mine in the bunker because I'm nervous and a bit in awe of him. So he was just a complete and utter genius. And there's things that he could do that I've never seen anybody do, including Messi and Maradona and that. He could do things with the ball that were just incredible with either foot. He was a total genius. And it was easy, at 16, for instance, the Weekly Herald, I don't know if you can remember the Weekly Herald, but they ran a big sort of spread on me as a 16-year-old. And the headline that they put out was the next Glenn Hoddle. And
no pressure, Mickey.
yeah, well, I remember at 16 thinking, wow, that's the best thing that anybody's ever said about me. Because, you know, I'm holding this guy in the highest of esteem and still do to this day. And he's still one of the two best Spurs players that I've ever seen play. And I look at Glenn and think, you know, and here I am being called the next Glenn Hoddle. And at 16, it was amazing. But by the time I got to 19, 20, when I was starting to break through, to still be being compared and called the next Glenn Hoddle, I started to think, no, I'm not the next Glenn Hoddle. I'm the first Micky Hazard.
Yeah.
You know, so the comparison and the accolade of being the next Glenn Hoddle sort of somehow helped maybe keep me a little bit in awe of him.
Yeah.
Not a bad footballer to be in awe of, but also when I played alongside him, you know, I used to think, well, if Glenn doesn't hit that wonder pass, I'll hit that wonder pass, you know, instead of thinking, well, I'm going to hit that wonder pass come what may. But he was a total genius. I'm sure you've all seen him play. He was incredible.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. 87 was my first year of supporting Spurs. Well, I saw him at Watford at 85 and 86 as well, but 87 was my first main year, which is Glenn's last year, really. So yeah, he was one of my heroes growing up. Him and Clive Allen were my first heroes, really. So I was lucky enough to see a year of him playing at least.
I never got to watch him play live. I mean, I came to actually supporting Spurs properly, you know, quite late. But I've seen, I mean, you've seen plenty, everyone has seen plenty of sort of videos and compilations and stuff like that. And my own view, and I'd appreciate actually to see whether or not I'm talking sense or not. My view is that if he would have been born, say, 20 years later or 30 years later, he would still be able to play in today's game in the same way that he did back in the 80s, because nothing he did was based on, or nothing he seemingly did was based on the physicality that is so important to today's game. It was all about his ability with the ball, which was divine, almost sublime. I mean, just amazing, you know.
Glenn Hoddle, as great as he was in our day, he will be even better today.
There you go.
The pitches are so much better. The physicality is far, far less in terms of, not in terms of fitness and things like that, but in terms of being kicked from pillar to post.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
It's far, far less in our day, in this day to our day. And I genuinely believe that Glenn Hoddle would achieve even more today than he ever did in our day. You know, I look at Glenn Hoddle and I think that he was totally mistreated by England, as a player and as a manager. But as a player, he should have had the whole team built around him, with me being alongside him.
Of course.
He was so special that I've seen some wonderful footballers, but I'd still say the most naturally gifted footballer, someone who could do anything with either foot, was Glenn Hoddle.
I see
Not
you,
the best footballer because he had flaws. He had flaws in his makeup, in his, you know, he didn't have fantastic pace, he didn't have fantastic stamina. But in terms of pure footballing ability, he was second to none.
I think I see you both come through the youth system in some senses. When you used to play your youth cup matches at White Hart Lane in the cup, I remember seeing Hoddle a few times. I can't remember if I see you once or twice as well, because I was only a youngster myself. So I used to be able to sneak out and go and watch some of the youth cup games when they were played at White Hart Lane.
Yeah,
I used to love it as a kid. If it weren't the youth cup, it was a combination. If it weren't a combination, it was a senior team. That was I was 10, 11 years old, and my life was Tottenham. Everything around me, just nothing else mattered.
Well, I actually won the football combination 3 years running. And
Nice.
You know, the strength of, in my opinion, the strength of any football club is as good as its youth setup. You know, when Keith Birkinshaw back in the day put massive onus on the youth setup, developing our own players, developing our own type of players. To play for Spurs, you have to be a special type of talent. And we produced players willy-nilly of that ilk. And it's my belief that any successful football club must have a great youth setup, because if you look at history, you know, if you go back throughout history, all the great teams, you know, you look at Barcelona in the recent past, who were possibly the best club side ever. They had 5 or 6 of homegrown players in their team. If you go back to Manchester United, they had 5 or 6 players homegrown in their team. All the best teams produce homegrown players, and then they supplement that by signing great footballers for lots of money. And what happens is the two go hand in hand, because the homegrown talent, they teach the great players that have been bought the heart and soul of the club. They teach them about the history. They teach them about the philosophies, the style, the importance of the NLD, for instance. That's what homegrown players do with the great players. So they educate the great players on the philosophies of the football club. And the great players then, in turn, pass on their knowledge to the homegrown players of what it takes to be a great player. And so they both go hand in hand. And what you must never, ever forget is that every world-class footballer, every best player in the world was a youngster somewhere. And he came through a youth setup. So why can't youth setups develop the greatest players in the world? Of course they can. And that's why the best teams are always a combination of homegrown talent that have been produced at the very highest level and big name signings.
I always say the same thing, Mickey. People forget that Messi was an unknown kid one time, wasn't he, as well? No one knew who he was, and then he came through
absolutely.
a youth setup. So
Ronaldo came from somewhere.
Every superstar's been a youngster at some football club. So there's no reason why, if you are familiar with the club that you run the setup, there's no reason why you shouldn't produce the quality of players that will be successful at that football club. If I look back on me, for instance, my time, you know, we had Glenn Hoddle, Neil McNabb, Stuart Bevan, who was underneath for me, Ian Crook, Vinnie Samwers, all coming through at the same time, all of a similar ilk of player, all of a type of player that the Tottenham faithful absolutely adored and loved, you know. They loved that creative player, that player with flair, that player who could dribble, who could pass through the eye of a needle, who could score great goals. You know, they loved that kind of player. And in my day, it was something that was the quality of the youngsters that would come. Of course, that wasn't neglecting the fact that we needed a Graham Roberts or a Steve Perryman or a Paul Miller or players of that ilk, or even your Steve Archibalds, your Garth Crooks, your Jimmy Bolton, your Terry Gibson, your Mark Falcos, these types of players as well. But in our day, there was such a... and I suppose we were helped by Peter Shreves, who also loved that type of player. So we were forever trying to find and produce that type of player in accordance with the philosophies of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to sort of get back to that a little bit, don't we? I mean, Mr. Levy talked about getting the DNA of the club back, didn't he, in one of his recent posts? So I guess that comes down to coaching and philosophy and getting those kind of players in, coaching in the right way, and then getting them into the first team, and the first team playing that way as well, and them raising their game when they do get into the first team.
Absolutely. You know, you must never forget that the part of being a Spurs footballer isn't just about being gifted or being talented or being able to do this or that with the ball and magical things. It's also about having the mentality to be a Spurs player, a Spurs player that, you know, I use Glenn Hoddle as an example, for instance. Glenn Hoddle I once did a Q&A with Glenn, and I was interviewing him, and I asked him about the goal he scored at Watford. You know, that wonderful chip.
The chip, yeah.
I was behind that, yeah.
And he said to me, Mick, this is in front of 350 people. He said, Mick, believe it or not, he said, I was having one of the worst days of my life that day. He said, I couldn't pass. I couldn't control the ball. He said, I couldn't do nothing. And I said, well, wow, Glenn, if you're having such a nightmare, how were you able to produce such an incredible moment of pure genius? Yeah. He said, because I never, ever lost faith in my talent. He said, my talent was there, whether I hit 10 bad passes or 10 slices when I was going for goal, I still believed the next one would be the best. And that's the key. That is the key to play without fear, to dare is to do, is that, you know, if first I don't succeed, you try again. You know, I look at Dele Alli when he first arrived at the club. You know, people talk about the demise of Dele Alli. The demise of Dele Alli came about not because he lost his talent. It came about because he stopped playing without that fear that he played in the first 3 or 4 years. In that first 3 or 4 years, he did skills and tricks, and he tried everything that was possible. You know, and looked like he was down the park with his mates at times. But that's what made him so great. If you look at him over the recent past, the last year or so, maybe longer, that no fear, you know, get on the ball, try things, do things. If they don't work, try them again until they do work. He sort of stopped doing that. And I feel like it impacted on not just his football, but on his personality too.
He lost that volatility that he had, in my eyes. And when he first came, he was, you know, always ready to sort of fight back, which obviously there's disciplinary things to concern yourself with, but that was integral to who he was, in my view. And he didn't have that for the last couple of years.
Do you think that fear, Mickey, comes from the crowd or from his manager, or a combination of the two?
I think it's a combination of things. I think maybe he got distracted. Maybe he started to believe his own publicity. Maybe the manager. I didn't think he was treated very well by Mourinho. In fact, I thought he was treated disgusting. Maybe he wasn't, but from the outside, it looked like he wasn't treated well. You know, we're talking about a super footballer here that was an England international, performing well for club and country, and then he went from there to almost looking like a novice. So the confidence, and I'm not a massive believer in what I'm about to say. I'm a big believer in that confidence should be something that's inbuilt. You shouldn't rely on someone saying, "Oh, you're a great player," or "That was a great pass," to lift your spirits, or the fans to sing your name to lift your spirits. Because just as you rely on them to lift you, the criticism can also knock you and put your confidence down. So I always try to have confidence that's on a level footing. It's on a straight line. You know, there's no going above the line or down below the line, because you've got that inner belief, that strength of mind to say, look, I'm a good player, like Glenn Hoddle. I'm a good player whether I give 10 consecutive passes away. I'm still going to try to chip the keeper with a Cruyff turn. Inner belief, inner confidence, that's what counts. Maybe Dele Alli sort of lost that a little bit because he took quite a battering over a sort of 2-year period, 18-month period. I think it's sad to see him go, because I think that if we'd have rebuilt him, he would have added something to our team and our squad that is lacking at the moment. Hopefully the 2 new players might add that, but Dele Alli had that something different. But he's gone, and hopefully we have to find another one that can play with the same freedom that he played with when he first arrived.
I think ideally, Mickey, the club would have liked to have kept him, but Everton, for their own purposes, they had too many loan players, didn't they? So they couldn't take him on loan. They had to make it a permanent deal. So maybe originally the plan was for him to go on loan, because I know we've invested quite a lot in Dele and getting him back onto form, haven't we? So maybe it was more to do with Everton, that the deal was a permanent one rather than a loan.
Yeah, and also it was fantastic money. You know, however way you look at it, his decline was very steep. I thought there was signs against Liverpool this season that he was starting to rebuild himself. But then it didn't materialise, and maybe the fact that after that good Liverpool performance that he put on, he didn't get picked in the next game. Maybe that didn't help him.
He got picked in a different role, Mickey, didn't he? The next game,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
Who did we play away from home? It was down the coast, wasn't it? Southampton, and they played him on the right of the three rather than as in the front of the three, and it was a completely different role. And that's not his game at all, is it?
He's gone, and wish him all success in the world. But if I was to offer him any advice, I would say, look, Delhi, get back to being that free spirit, that player who plays with no fear, is not afraid of the ball, not afraid of the opponents. You respect them, but you disrespect them if you like. I'm better than you. And arrogance, at times he was almost bordering on arrogant, that you can't get this ball off of me. And get back to being that, Delhi, and you'll find your way back in the England team.
He used to nutmeg people for fun, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Pretty much every game, just to see it as a little competition, I think, with the other players to see if he could nutmeg that week.
Exactly. And that again was a sign that he no longer played with that freedom, because he stopped nutmegging people.
We had that master of the ball, didn't he, to feel he could do it.
Did Mourinho take that away from him, like trying to stop him playing in that way?
Look, from the outside, I don't know whether he did or he didn't, but from the outside, it looked like he did. You know, Mourinho's been an incredibly successful manager and been a great manager. Sadly, his philosophies sort of never sat well with us as Tottenham fans. Now, he's often said publicly that he doesn't tell them to sit deep or to defend when you've got 1-0 up after 10 minutes. Well, I sort of can't go for that in many ways, because if I was manager, they would play the way I want them to play. It's as simple as that. And if they don't, then they wouldn't be in the team. So I often thought, well, if they're not doing what you want them to do, keep attacking, get the second, get the third. I mean, that's the Spurs way. You 1-0 up, you get 2, you get 3, you get 4. If you're 1-0 up with 5 minutes to go, you shoot up shop, you keep the ball, you take the sting out of the game, and you stop. You see out the game. But when there's 85 minutes to go, you 1-0 up, you want the second, you want the third, you want the fourth, you put it to bed, you want to keep going forward. Don't shut up shop, because you're inviting. And I think it happened by accident. We played Arsenal at home. We had 2 incredible goals that were sensational in the first half. Yeah. And then the second half, we didn't get out of our half. No. But we hung on comfortably, not because we defended great, because they were just so poor on the day. And I think that then we did the same with Manchester City as well. And I think that then led us to believe that that was the way forward. But in the end, it was our undoing, because it wasn't true to the philosophies of our football club.
You always leave yourself open to a mistake or a bit of individual brilliance from the opposition, don't you, when it's 1-0? There's not enough breathing space there.
I hated being 1-0 up. Hated it.
Yeah.
Because I knew that the last Mickey, the game going to be the longest 5 minutes of my life. When you 1-0 up, I remember the UEFA Cup semi-final, Hajduk Split. We 1-0 up after 7 minutes, and we had 83 minutes plus injury time to keep it 1-0. It felt like we played 6 games by the end of the game, because you want that second. That second gives you a breathing space, and if you can get the third as well, then that's sort of more or less
that's it. Game over.
Victory. So
what did the manager say to you, Mickey? Was he encouraging you to keep it 1-0 or to push for the second and the third?
Second, third, fourth.
Yeah.
I don't think the manager had to say it. It was inbuilt in us as a group of players. We never stopped going forward. We never ever didn't want to score or didn't want to get the second, the third, the fourth, fifth. Did it backfire? Sometimes it did. But sometimes, more often than not, we would get a second or a third. But those 7-minute goals, and then having to sit back and defend for 83 minutes, God, I can't imagine the people on the bench, the stress, the fans, the stress. I ate 1-0.
Did you enjoy defending that day?
Sorry, did I?
Did you enjoy the defensive side of the game?
No.
You thought, here we go, it's going to be a long night for Micky Hazard.
Yeah, can I tell you what, right? When you're born with and inbuilt into you the philosophies that I have on how the game should be played, it's not about, trust me, none of those philosophies about chase back and make a sliding tackle to save the day. My philosophies are all about beating 3 men, chipping the goalkeeper, beating 3 men, putting someone clean in on goal, doing a back flick to put someone away on goal. My philosophies are all about that. Of course, when you break through to the very top of the game, you know, the Premier League or the Division 1, as it was mainly in my day, you realise, or you're taught that, you know, you have to contribute to the other side of the game also, you know, by playing a role within the defensive unit. And that was fine. I could do that, no problem. But the minute my mind, you know, Keith Birkinshaw always used to say to me, "Will you go into a tackle?" He said, "Stop trying to nick the ball." I used to say, "Keith, imagine if I nick the ball, Keith." I said, "We're away." I said, because they're on the attack. They're all spreading, as you do when you've got your attack. That, you know, your attack is like a hand. When you've got the ball, you open the hand as wide as you can. And when you haven't got your ball, you clench your fist as tight as you can. So there's no gaps. So if you can nick the ball when the opponent's on the attack, you're hitting them when they're at the weakest, because they've got to regroup and narrow down. So I always used to try and just nick the ball. So just get there, just nick it over his foot, and I'm away, and they're on the defensive, and they've got to reorganise quickly. But Keith used to go mad at me. "Micky, put that foot in." No, Keith, you've got to understand, if I nick the ball, I've did something great that helps us score a goal at the other end.
I think I've heard you say before, Ozzy used to do similar. He used to show him the ball, didn't he? To make them think they could get it, and then he'd nip it away. Yeah.
Ozzy was the best in the world. What he used to wait for, he'd wait for the ball to go into a centre forward's feet. The centre back would be up his backside, and the centre forward's head would be down on the ball, and Ozzy would just leave his man. The minute the guy's head went down, eyes went onto the ball, he would leave his man and come round from the front and take the ball away. He was the master. And obviously, that was one of the greatest things that I learnt off Ozzy. I learnt to nick balls without having to make a tackle, because I much preferred, if you slide into a tackle, even if you win a tackle, it'll go for a throw in, or it'll go somewhere else, and it might go to one of them. But if you nick the ball, you're straight on the attack.
Up and away, yeah. Awesome stuff. I guess we better get on with some of the questions. My fault. I could just listen to you talk all day, Micky. Sorry. Next question we've got. Your first home game for Spurs as a professional. Can you remember the game, the score, and the scorers? And what do you remember most about the day?
I can't remember the scorers. It was against Everton. My first home game debut was against Everton in a 3-0 win. I got voted man of the match as well. I actually wasn't, I've got to say. But my everlasting, two things, my everlasting memory. Getting changed in the dressing room. I mean, obviously the best thing was being told on the Friday that you're playing. But on the Saturday, being in the dressing room, getting changed, and looking to your left, and it's Ozzy Ardiles, and then look to your right, and it's Glenn Hoddle. And thinking, Christ, you got Glenn and Ozzy in your team. What do you need Micky Hazard for? And then just before I went out, John Pratt, whose place I'd taken, came up to me and he said, "Micky, go out and show them how good you are. Express yourself. Just show them how good you are." I thought that was very amazing.
Sign of a true man, isn't it? That
lovely man,
exactly. And then after the game, as I lay in the bath, he came in, shook my hand. He said, "Micky, that was brilliant. You showed them what a player you are. You're going to be a massive success at this club." Now, this is a guy whose place that I'd just taken, someone who'd played 350 games for Spurs. and losing it out to a 19-year-old youngster to do what he did was incredible. But they're my everlasting memories of the game, rather than the actual game itself.
Yeah, that leads me on to my next question. Actually, you just touched on it. How did you find out you'd made the first team squad for the first time? How were you sort of told, and how did you find out?
Well, I'd been in the squad a number of times, but the week before, Keith pulled me into his. We had a training session up in the gym on the Friday. We were playing Man United at Old Trafford, and Keith finished the training in the gym. And Keith pulled me into his room and said, "Mickey, you're going to be starting tomorrow at Old Trafford." Okay, brilliant. Anyway, go back into the physio's room, and I've got a big blister on my toe. I don't tell anyone. So I go into the physio treatment room and I get a needle and I burst it myself. Squeeze all the blood out and what have you. And overnight it turned poison. So when I wake up on the Saturday morning, my foot's, big toes like a balloon, and I can't walk. So obviously I'm no longer playing. Now, sometimes I look back and I think fate is a very, very strange thing, because we lost 4-0 that day. And if I'd have played in that 4-0 defeat, would I have ever got another chance?
You certainly wouldn't have got man of the match, eh?
Exactly. So I missed that game, but the fact that they lost 4-0 meant that if I'm fit for the following week, I'm going to be in the team, which I was. So it's strange how fate works, and it worked in my favour on that occasion.
Next question, linked to that. Who was the first person you told when you found out?
There was only one person. There's only one person that I wanted to tell. One person, and to run down Tottenham High Road to find a phone to ring my mum. To listen to my mum shouting and screaming down the phone, like it was all of her dreams coming true on that one very special moment. My excitement, I remember my excitement so clearly that I was telling the woman that brought me into this world that her son had achieved his schoolboy dream by playing in the old First Division. I'll never forget, as long as I live, that my mum, and and it's every parent, and I'm no different, and no doubt you're no different. If you've got children, every parent's dream is for the very, very best for their children. They want nothing but their best. Whatever their children dream that they want to do or want to be, then that becomes the parent's dream also. So to be a part of not just my dream for me, but my mum's dream for me too, was a very, very special moment, I have to say.
Did you tell her that you were playing against Man United, or was that the home game?
No, I didn't tell, because I got pulled. I got pulled out before I told my mum and dad.
So were your parents at your debut? Did they come down to London?
No. No, I was only on 80 quid a week.
£80 a week.
It was British Rail back then, and they're pricey.
50 quid train fare for my mum, 50 quid for my dad, and then my brothers and sisters. They all came down for quite a few games.
Yeah,
but not my debut.
Do you remember the first Spurs shirt you wore and what number you were?
No.
Can you remember that? No?
No idea.
Nick, can you look it up? I don't know if they probably wouldn't have the shirt numbers on the,
You know what?
records, would they?
It's I think when you're young and you're breaking through, it's not something that you think about, like keeping your shirt, keeping your debut shirt, keeping your cup-winning shirts, It's not something that you think about because you're just wrapped up in the excitement of everything that's going on. Now when I look, for instance, I go around Cliff Jones's house on a regular basis, and he's got a little museum in his house as a tribute to his career, and it's full up of shirts, pictures he's had with players signed by superstars worldwide, and I've got nothing, not a solitary thing. Even my medals are in the Spurs Museum, and I think about my life in football now, and I think, wow, what was I thinking? I should have a little shrine to my career in a room that's just solely for my life and times in football, and I've not got one solitary thing. So no, I didn't think about what number I was, what shirt I had. Probably didn't throughout my whole career. And now, in hindsight, at the age of 62, I wished that every single item, every single program, every single thing that I ever did in football, I'd kept record of.
I bet you were just pleased to be playing. You didn't care what shirt. You'd have worn number 1, wouldn't you?
You know what? The thing is, there's a great saying is that, and I'm a big believer in it also, is that, look, people say, why did you give your medals to the Spurs Museum? Well, because I actually played in the final. I won the trophy. I'm in history as having won the trophy. My name's in every team sheet that's written down as an FA Cup or a UEFA Cup winner. So I don't need a medal to remind me of what I achieved.
Yeah.
It's
you're in the history books. Yeah, you're in the history books.
You're in the history books. But then the other side of the coin is what I've just said. Sorry, my battery's running out.
Oh, no.
I'm just going to put this in, the charger in.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other side of the coin, where are we? Where have you gone? So the other side of the coin is that while it's spot on, I was there, I was the one who did it. The memories is what sees me through, is what enables me to think back and look back and see how wonderful it was. And all of my achievements are locked away in my head. But ultimately, maybe, just maybe, I fully understand the people who want to keep all the little things that they gathered along the way. Because as we get older, our memory dwindles. And to have a shirt that says, I played in this game and I scored the winning goal in this game. In times of maybe when you're very, very old, I would imagine it must be very comforting and bring a great sense of pride. But was that the shirt that I made my debut in?
Number 4.
Oh, was that number 4? Blimey.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't even know I'd ever worn a number 4. That's incredible.
Not only your memories, Mickey, other people's memories. That's what keeps it alive, isn't it? That people coming up to you all the time and saying where they were and stuff.
You know what? Of everything that you talk about, everything that you remember from a personal perspective, the greatest joy, and I hope and I think that every footballer would think like this. I don't know if they do, but I hope that they would. The greatest joy of all is the joy that you bring so many other people. If people say to me about my greatest moment in football, and Everybody expects me to talk about the UEFA Cup final or the FA Cup final or great league games, wins at Anfield or first time for 72 years, etc. But the greatest memory was the finale, White Hart Lane, when we saw the joy, in the great day that it was Manchester United, but also the joy on so many people's faces was just a sight for sore eyes. It was just amazing to be part of this day that, the history of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club was sitting in the stands and standing on the pitch. Decades of former players, former greats, former cup winners, former everything. And it was all done with so much style and so much class, symbolising exactly what Tottenham Hotspur Football Club stands for. We stand for creativity and flair. And if you talk about the finale, that day was full of creativity, full of flair. The team played with great flair and creativity that day too. The fans in the stand, everything. And then, and I've said this on previous podcasts, and as if by a twist of fate, again, talking about fate, it was the day that God decided to let the world know that he was a Spurs fan.
Yeah.
When he produced the rainbow that ran from the shelf to the thing. God, no stadium will ever get a better send-off. No stadium will ever have a God putting out a rainbow to show, 1, joy, and 2, sadness that we were leaving the stadium. And strangely enough, when I got home that night, someone had posted the picture of the rainbow over running from one side of the stadium to the other, and that sort of built into this picture of Bill Nick's head looking down on us all.
Yeah. It's a beautiful visual. It really was absolutely.
Some things surpass individual achievements, or team achievements, or even club achievements. Some things go beyond those things. Those are what we're about. Those are the things that we're trying to achieve. Those are the things that we're all aiming for and striving for. And as fans, you want to see your team win trophies. As players, you want to be part of history and winning that trophy and being remembered for it. As a club, that's should be your aim also. But some things surpass those things. And for me, the finale that day was a changing of the guard, if you like. It was the end of an era, the most wonderful era that you could imagine, with untold successes. First team to win a FA Cup non-league, first team to win in Europe, first team to win the double. So many amazing memories. And then we were changing over to a new stadium and hopefully making even better memories. And the way I look back at White Hart Lane is the way kids of today, 15, 16, 14, 13, 11, 12, they will look at the new stadium in years to come. It will be their place of worship as White Hart Lane was our place of worship, So we must never be afraid of progress and change. As much as I idolise White Hart Lane, it was my home. It was where I grew up in a football environment and grew to worship everything about it. But I welcomed the change because I knew that one day youngsters of that day will remember the new stadium the way we remembered the old stadium.
It was just a day of nice little touches, wasn't it, Mickey? From my own point of view, the guy I used to go with Gazza, he's on the podcast sometimes. We used to go, me and him, 15 years. I was in the shelf side, which is what the podcast's named after. And he was behind the goal in the south stand. And when they had the pitch invasion, there's thousands of people on the pitch, chaos going on. And literally, as I got to the penalty spot, down in front of the south stand, Gazza came walking through the crowds, and we met the guy that I've been going to the games with for like 10, 15 years. Of all the people, like right on the penalty spot, as we both got there, of all the people, all the thousands on the pitch at that time. It's just a day of little moments like that, wasn't it?
That was just, listen, I'm blessed I saw that all there from the very inside. I didn't have to stand on the terraces waiting for incredibly special moments to occur. I was part of those special moments on the inside. I was in the lounge, for instance, with 49 former players from our past, 49 legends and superstars, and I managed to get all 49 on a signatures.
Awesome.
You know, it was standing in the tunnel with the old 49 players waiting to be introduced to the crowd, standing in between David Ginola in front of me and Glenn Hoddle behind me. You know, I've told everybody, why did you stand between Hoddle and Ginola and Hoddle? Well, because they decided that they wanted to put the three best looking footballers in Spurs history together. You know, so I got to be part of, from an insider's point of view, the most, other than the birth of my children and the birth of my grandchildren, part of the greatest day in my life. And then I got to sing with the fans, Can't Smile Without You, out on the pitch, Glory, Glory. I got to do a parade around the pitch after the fans had all come on with the flags. Listen, every time I talk about the finale, I get goosebumps running through my body. I get a lump in my throat, because it was the most incredible occasion. But then it was tinged with sadness too, because we were leaving our place of worship. But an unbelievable, and I have to compliment the club. I thought the club did it absolutely so special. It was done with, it wasn't tacky. I've seen things done in the past by football clubs that I think, oh man, come on, man, that's too tacky. You know, it's over the top. I thought this was done with such class, such style, pretty much in the way that I would have chosen to do it. It was just wonderful. And then fans coming onto the pitch, digging up the pitch and getting pieces of the turf to take home. I was with a guy recently. He when they were knocking, he was part of the building firm, and he was taking some bricks, took loads of bricks home, you know, and built something in his back garden as a memory. You know, the memories for everybody that day were just absolutely.
I've got a bit of grass over there, Mickey, in a little case. They sent me a key ring the next year, but no, I actually got some from the pitch that day, Rez. And so I got some. I stuffed it in my pocket, grabbed some grass, and put it in my pocket.
You know, a sad day, but filled with such incredible excitement.
That brings me on to the next question, actually, Mickey. How did you feel about leaving the lane?
Just from White Hart Lane.
How do I feel about
that's your seat, is it?
Yeah.
Answer that question again.
Sorry,
that's my seat.
Mickey's got he's got his seat there, Rez, from the
White Hart Lane. That was my seat.
Oh, yeah,
nice one.
How do I feel?
How did you feel about leaving the lane for the last time after the finale?
Well, if you ask me, before the finale, I would say that it was devastating to be leaving White Hart Lane. You know, White Hart Lane had been my life in football in reality. You know, I joined Spurs, or I was scouted by Spurs at the age of 11, 12. I joined as a schoolboy at 14. I then joined YTS at 16. I signed pro at 18. Made my debut at 19. Won the FA Cup at 21. Won the UEFA Cup at 24, 22. White Hart Lane was my life. I know nothing but White Hart Lane. To then be at the final closure of White Hart Lane, and to see it get the send off that it got was incredible. It was an incredible send off. But I must confess, I was very excited. Also, I was sad that, you know, moments that every time I walk into White Hart Lane, for instance, and I walk down the tunnel and I'd walk onto the pitch, there'd be places that I could stand whereby I could reminisce. Oh, this is where I scored the winning goal in the semi-final of the UEFA Cup. I'd stand in that exact point and run the goal through my mind, visualize it, the excitement that I felt. Sit in the stands. I once did an interview for Sweden TV, sitting in the stand, pointing out all the places in the games where I'd scored goals or did something spectacular. But then the other side of the coin is that the excitement of the new stadium, the excitement that what we were doing was we were trying to take ourselves to a new level, a level that will enable us to be able to, football moved on with the advent of Sky and the astronomical money that was coming into the game, benefiting the ultimate biggest clubs of them all. And we were now taking ourselves to a level where we could compete financially, even with the biggest clubs in the game. And while it hasn't bore fruit yet, we've been really unlucky with COVID. COVID came in not long after the stadium opened and the money that was generating. But for years to come, we are in a position now to compete on an equal basis. Clubs in the past have had maybe a bit more financial clout than we've had. But in the not too distant future, particularly when we get nearer to paying off the loan, this football club is in a position to be one of the greatest in the land, because we've got the best stadium in the land, we've got the best training facilities in the land. We need to get the best team in the land also, but we are now in a position that we can compete with the big teams who have got more financial clout than what we've had. And that's amazing. And once we get one success, it'll lead to many more. Like in the 80s, we won our first trophy and it led to more because suddenly we believed we were going to win more. So I think that the foundations are laid now, they're in place for us to have long-term success. Where maybe in the past, every time, when I look through our history, we've always had little spurts of cup successes, the early 60s, the early 70s, the early 80s. We've won 3 or 4 trophies each period, and then it's the teams got split up. Someone's been sold on, someone else has been sold on. There's no reason for us to do that anymore. This time, the next time we have success, we get that first trophy, we don't have to sell. We can keep them. We can build, and we can build for an even more success. And that's the benefits of the new stadium and the training ground and its facilities. Is one, it'll attract top names to our football club. Also, once we start winning a trophy or two.
There was also an excitement on the finale, wasn't there? Because the team were playing so beautifully, and we didn't lose at home, did we? All season that final year.
What a fitting send-off!
Yeah, what a brilliant send-off to it.
Brilliant send-off to go a full season undefeated. I mean, I remember when Arsenal said, because they went a full season where we were invincible. Well, we were invincible at White Hart Lane.
Correct. Yeah,
absolutely.
No, the stadium was our fortress that season.
It was, and that's what we need to do with the new stadium. We need to make that our fortress. We need to put teams, we need to get at them from the first whistle. For me, too often nowadays, we actually allow them to come at us. No, we have to go at them straight from the off, get them under pressure, let them know, press everywhere, let them know they're in for this is what it was like in my day. Everywhere we went to play, no matter who we played, they come at us in the first. When we played away from home, Keith and Shreves would always say, keep the crowd quiet in the first 20 minutes. Get them quiet, right? Null the storm, weather the storm, and then come at them, Because the first 20 minutes was like, wow, you couldn't get your breath. They would come throw everything at you. Nowadays, it doesn't appear to be, certainly recent past, we tend to start a bit slow and then get better as the game progresses, but we have to make it our fortress again.
Like chess, isn't it? They kind of size each other out, like boxers, like standing away from each other, like not being able to hit each other, like looking at each other rather than in your days going at it.
Jab here and there.
20 minutes.
The problem with chess is sometimes it takes 3 days to bloody end.
Next question. Which part of the old White Hart Lane do you remember most fondly? I imagine you're going to say that spot where you scored the winner in the semi-final, aren't you?
Well, there's many spots. I must say that the most amazing place in White Hart Lane was the Shelf. I absolutely adored the Shelf. I love to look at it. I love to stand on the opposite side of the pitch where the tunnel was and just stand and look at the Shelf. In fact, I run an events business, and on my edit, whatever it is, whatever you call it, the background picture is the Shelf, because it was so amazing, and a place to run and celebrate a goal with fans. It's just I'm very much into choosing. It's easy to sit here and say, "Oh yeah, the penalty, the spot where I scored that goal, or the spot where I scored that goal, or the spot where I beat 34 men and hit the crossbar." It's easy to choose those things because they are individual things. But I prefer the bigger, greater things. Like the Shelf will be forever remembered in our history. So that carries much more meaning than me scoring a winning goal in the semi-final of the UEFA Cup. It might not, in the short-term scheme of things on that particular night, it felt like the best thing that's ever happened to me. But when you look at the big picture, there's a much, much bigger picture goes on in everything that we do. And the Shelf forever will live in my memory, forever. In fact, when you sometimes scroll through the internet, when you type in Tottenham Hotspur, one of the greatest pictures that you'll ever see is when you see a full-on picture of the Shelf, whether it's full or whether it's empty. It's a magical sight. As the South Stand will be in the future, the South Stand will carry the same feeling as the Shelf years to come. Obviously, it's still new. We're still it's its honeymoon period. We like it and we love it, but in years to come, the meaning of that South Stand will carry as much meaning as the Shelf.
What a perfect answer as well, considering the podcast that you're on, the Shelf Side Spurs show. You couldn't have said anything else, Mickey, could you?
You
represent
say
the Shelf.
When he's on the Paxton Road podcast next week, he's going to say Paxton Road, isn't he?
Paxton Road, yeah. Do you think anyone's done a West Stand podcast?
Probably not. There's a niche in the market there, I think.
I actually sit in the West Stand, so maybe that could be mine.
I like that. The Micky Hazard West Stand podcast. It's got a nice ring to it, isn't it?
The Micky Hazard prawn sandwich stand. I do like the prawn sandwich.
Who doesn't? Next question. What's the loudest atmosphere you remember at the old lane?
At the old lane, I don't know what the loudest is. What I think the greatest atmosphere I ever heard at White Hart Lane was UEFA Cup final. When Danny Thomas missed the penalty, the penalty that would have won us the UEFA Cup, and he missed. And echoing round the ground was one Danny Thomas. I maintain to this day that that inspired Tony Parks to make the save that he made. The support that the fans gave Danny, I think it lifted everyone's spirits. And I genuinely believe that on that night, the 12th man won us the trophy.
Turned a negative into a positive, didn't they?
Exactly.
Yeah. Next question. Apart from White Hart Lane, where did you enjoy playing most, if anywhere? Away grounds and whatnot.
I used to love playing at Anfield. There's everywhere you played. I played at the Bairn, I'd played at the Nou Camp, I'd played at Bayern Munich, I'd played everywhere. But I always feel there's something that sort of makes your heart flutter. Coming out the tunnel at White Hart Lane, to glory, glory. My heart used to pound. Does to this day when I hear glory, glory as I'm coming up the tunnel for an half-time chat or whatever. But also, it's not just about your own club. I used to love playing at Anfield, because as I came to the tunnel, just above it, it used to say, "This is Anfield."
Yeah.
And I used to love that. It used to touch my heartstrings. I used to think, "Oh wow, that is magic." To go to such a famous footballing venue and run out when you've seen that, really, really lovely words.
And you played in that game, didn't you, when we beat them for the first time since the Titanic sank? You were there.
I actually made the goal. I should have scored the goal. I hit a great volley top corner, and bloody Grobbler saved it, and Goff tapped it in from a yard.
And you get some kudos.
Cheers, Cooksy, mate.
Were you on an assist bonus or not in those days? You get a goal bonus and an assist bonus. No.
In those days, we didn't get bloody assist bonuses. But no, yeah, that was a special occasion as well. To win for the first time in 72 years up at Anfield was incredible. But we actually beat Liverpool quite a few times in those days. We were a very special team. We maybe didn't have the consistency to win the league. We should have won the league. But because we played with such flair and creativity, creativity is defined in the dictionary, actually says that it's not something that can be recreated at will. So sometimes the creativity and the flair that we played with sometimes became our biggest weakness as well. Sadly, cost us a couple of titles.
Do you remember your first away game? That's my next question. Going away with the team for the first time on an away trip.
Oh, God, what a great question. Nope, I don't.
Do you remember who you roomed with at all? First time, and then who you roomed with more regularly after that?
Oh, I always roomed with Ozzy Ardiles.
Couple of Madlands together.
They thought it was rather appropriate to put an Argentinian and a Geordie together. They probably could understand each other better.
At least you're guaranteed to get a sleep because you couldn't talk to each other because you didn't know what you were saying to each other. I'm going to sleep.
The away game. I tell you a story about Paul Miller's first away game.
Go on.
Paul Miller's first away game. He went away with Steve Perryman. And he'd never been in an hotel before, and they went down to dinner at 7:30, at the hotel on the away game, and the waiter come round and took the order for the food, and Stevie P, who was Chateaubriand is for two, yeah. So Stevie turned to Maxie, he said, "Maxie, Chateaubriand." He said, "No, Stevie, I don't drink wine night before a game."
The cultured dressing room that we have.
Yeah, he's a lot more knowledgeable now. Trust me.
Bit of a wine connoisseur, is he?
Mickey, you telling us that, and just to correct, I understand you're from Sunderland, so you're a Mackem, not a Geordie, correct?
I'm a Mackem.
Johnny, but I don't know. If I'm sure everyone knows Paul Whitehouse is a Spurs fan, and he was on Harry Enfield and Friends. And when he was on there, he did a character called Julio Giorgio. And seeing as you have roomed with Ozzy, I get this suspicion that perhaps, just perhaps, that might have been inspired by you and Ozzy sharing a room.
Well, maybe,
just possibly.
Maybe it was a strange. I mean, to this day, he's still one of my very, very closest friends. I mean, I was with him yesterday now at the Marriott Hotel. I spoke to him today on the phone. I see him. I play golf with him 3 times a week. We're still the closest of friends, and I don't know how it developed. It's an unlikely friendship, but I think it was born out by the fact that Ozzy, for some reason, loved me as a footballer. Loved the way I played the game, and showed later on because he signed me twice. And I think that being a young kid as well, that he enjoyed watching and the way that I played, he sort of took me under his wing. I think that's how the relationship grew. I don't think it was something that I instigated. I think it was more that Ozzy instigated, not through the fact that he liked me as a friend, through the fact that he liked me as a footballer, and then tried to guide me down the right paths.
Did you choose to go together, or does the manager say you two are together, you two are together?
I don't know. I can't remember, actually. I know that later on, when we were all a bit older and wiser, like when we went on tour to South Africa or Swaziland or wherever we went, obviously it would just be the done thing that me and Ozzy would room together. I had some amazing conversations with him till 3-4 o'clock in the morning when we were on tour together. Scary conversations. Ozzy once said to me, lying in bed at 3 o'clock in the morning chatting, and then he said to me, Duke, because he calls me Duke even to this day, Dukes of Hazard. Duke.
I know.
Duke's gone.
Hello.
You're back, Duke.
He said, Duke. I said, yeah. He said, tell me, what would you do if you won £1 million? Now, remember, £1 million in those days was an incredible amount of money. I said, oh, what would I do? I said, I'd buy my mum and dad a new house. I'd buy all my brothers and sisters a new house. I said, I'd make them all rich. I said, I'd look after all my family. I said, Ozzy, I said, what would you do if you won $1 million? He said, you mean if I won another $1 million? oh, really?
we mentioned him earlier, actually, Mickey, because someone said about Benton Kerr, the guy coming from Uruguay, and they said, I hope he'll settle in soon and he'll learn to speak English. And someone goes, fucking hell, Ozzy's been here 40 years and he can't speak English, let alone a week for Benton Kerr.
I want to shock you here. Ozzy has as good, a far superior vocabulary than me. His English vocabulary is absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
You just can't understand a word he says.
What he's saying is brilliant. You just got to understand it. Yeah.
Is it true a rumor about him, Mickey? Is it true about a rumor that he's got to put his clocks forward or backwards once and walked into church an hour late or an hour early or something?
Oh, that would be Ozzy. That would be Ozzy. You know why he forgot? He forgot because his wife normally does it for him. You can go round Ozzy's house at any time and you will catch Ozzy sitting in his chair and his wife will be making a cup of tea or getting you a glass of Coke. She will do absolutely everything. And Ozzy will sit there.
We like you, Alan.
Mine's a reason.
I can't deny
reason behind mine.
We'll have to start calling you Ozzy, Alan, from now on.
I've got a reason behind mine. I ain't got much mobility, so.
It got us thinking as well, Mickey. Was there any initiation ceremonies in those days? These days they make them stand up and sing a funny song or something. Did they do that in your day? No.
Thankfully, none. Because as a young boy, I was amazingly shy. I wouldn't even say hello to anybody. I was so shy. So if they actually initiated me, for instance, when I had to, because obviously when you're an apprentice, you have to pick up the players' kits and boots and put them away in the wash bins and clean their boots, etc. I used to have to wait till all the players had left the dressing room before I would go in and pick it up. So if any of them said hello to me, I used to go bright red.
The old cheeks were flying, were they?
Yeah. Amazing.
So I was so pleased we didn't have an initiation ceremony.
You'd have hated it then having to stand up and sing a pop song.
Oh, well, I don't know about singing, but we
had the hair for it in those days, didn't you? You could have done the old Leo Sayer with the old.
Yeah, the problem I have with singing is that once I sing, millions, and I mean millions of people would flock to the stadium if they heard me.
The multi-talented Micky Hazard. I suspect I know the answer to this one, but who's your favourite all-time Spurs player? You mentioned there were the greatest Spurs players, or two of them you mentioned earlier.
Glenn and Ozzy. I mean, very, very different. Ozzy had probably the best football brain that I've ever seen in any player. He was sort of 3 or 4 moves ahead. which is borne out by the way he used to defend. And obviously won a World Cup and achieved the ultimate, the greatest prize you can achieve. But it was a wonderful footballer too, on top of all those things. Glenn was just a pure genius. The biggest compliment I can give both of them is that apart from being great footballers, absolute, totally wonderful human beings. When I consider the greatness that both of them were and both of them achieved, to stay true to yourself, it gives you an indication about why they were special talents.
Next question. Which opposition player did you most dislike playing against? Was there anyone that had sort of the hex over you?
I'd rather name a team than an individual. I absolutely hated, and I mean hated, Wimbledon. The Vinnie Jones, John Fashanu era, that era.
Crazy
there wasn't not one thing that I liked about them or respected about them. I thought they were
anti-football, weren't they?
They were anti-football, and they relied on intimidation and all of that. And after talking earlier about my beliefs on the way the game should be played, they didn't play it anything like the way I should be played. So I not only didn't like them, I didn't respect them either.
We would listen to some old Brian Clough stories in our group,
yeah.
and he mentioned when they played the Crazy Gang about they turned up at Nottingham Forest and they had the music blasting. So Brian Clough asked his assistant to go down and ask him to turn it down. So they turned it up. So then he sent his assistant down again to say, "Please, can you turn it down?" They turned it up again. So Brian Clough went down there, stormed into the dressing room and smashed the ghetto blaster on the floor. Said, "Now play your fucking music,
Wimbledon."
Yeah. Absolutely. It was done as a sort of intimidation. I mean, that I got to be honest with you, that would do my brains in listening to that before a game. I was just a people watcher before a game. I used to watch all the other players, watch how they prepared, watch how they warmed up, watch how they acted. Were they nervous? Were they not? You could learn so much from watching them. I used to do it every single game throughout my whole career. Just sit there and watch how people reacted to the situation. Make no bones about it. When you're sitting in the dressing room, prior to a game, it's a nerve-wracking experience in many ways.
Yeah.
And I've seen people actually be physically sick before a game. And that was their way of coping with the nervousness of the situation. But it was an absolute education to sit there and watch Gary Mabbott, for instance. And I only recently, not long ago, found out why. But Gary Mabbott, he used to come in and he'd sit down next to his shirt number and all his kit and his towels. And his towel was folded nicely, but he'd unfold the towel and then he'd fold it up absolutely impeccable and put it down. He'd walk out the room, come back in, undo the towel again, fold it up again. And he used to do this about 20 times before the game. And I used to sit and watch. I used to laugh. And then recently at a Q&A, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I said to him, "Mabsy," I said, I've watched you for years coming into before the game, and you'd unfold the towel and then you'd fold it up and then you'd unfold it again. And I said, "You do this for like 20, 30 times before a game." I said, "Why? What do they call that illness you have when you see something out of place?"
Obsessive compulsive
OCD.
disorder.
OCD.
Yeah, OCD. He said, "I've got OCD, and if I saw one line out of place, I'd have to redo the whole thing." And I thought,
well, everyone's towels,
I
Jesus.
always thought it was nerves. He said, "No, I didn't suffer with nerves." He said, "But I used to see someone had maybe touched it and it would have knocked it out of place or something, and I have to redo it and get it neat and tidy." It was incredible.
Imagine how peed off he would be if someone knocked it. Oh dear.
Sounds like what Gazza would do. Can you imagine if Gazza knew that?
Yeah, well, Gazza had OCD as well, famously, didn't he? Did you get nervous, Mickey?
Well.
Did you used to get nervous before? Oh, you have as well?
No, I never suffered with any nerves.
No.
None.
So when you used to look around the dressing room, were you looking sort of which players were nervous, how they coped with it, or just to sort of see how they prepared for the game? Was it?
Well, no, it was more of a fun thing to pass the time. You know,
Yeah.
When people used to run out the room to get physically sick, some people would
chuckling
sit
away.
on a banana or something. Some people, it was a fun thing to do. That sort of 1 hour from 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock for a 3 o'clock kickoff.
Oh, is he? Oh no.
Is he still? Oh, he's flashing something. Is he joined again there? Someone's joined. Rez, can you add him
Yes.
at the bottom there? Is that...
Yeah, bear with. Let me remove this one in that case. There we go. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Yes.
And put him back up the top middle there.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, you said that period between 2 and 3 o'clock. You were saying.
The period between 2 and 3 o'clock was the most boring period you could ever imagine. So that 2 till 2:30 was so dull and boring until you went out for your warm up, and then from getting back in from your warm up from sort of say 20 to 3 till 5 to 3 till 5 minutes before you're going out. Oh, I used to get so bored, and it's the fact that you knew something really exciting was coming. So obviously, the anticipation made the wait much more boring.
Yeah,
because you knew something was coming that was very, very exciting.
You couldn't wait to get started, get out there and get going. Did you used to enjoy juggling before the game and stuff, or did they let you juggle before this sort of the physical warm up, or after the physical?
We never did a physical. We were left to our own devices.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah.
So I used to, whoever was sort of in and around my age, we used to go out under the pitch at sort of 2:30, say. He would go over to the far side of the pitch in front of the shelf. I would stand in front of the tunnel, and we would just ping 40-yard passes to each other. That was our warm up. Never ever stretched. And then sort of we'd go out 6 minutes before the game, or we'd be in the tunnel 6 minutes before the game. That would be for me the moments that I really zoned in on my warm up, on my sharpness, on my changing a direction, twisting, turning, all of those things. I would zone in 5 or 6 minutes before the game. The early warm up would just be working on technical things, pinging balls to one another, bringing it down, try and control it and do a Cruyff turn at the same time, something like that. But the 5 or 6 minutes before kickoff, I'd be zoned in on twisting, turning, changes of pace, changes of direction, things like that.
As a player myself now, did you have any sort of mental things that you went into to sort of start the game, to sort of say, right, first 5 minutes I want to do this, or I want to impose myself this way? Was there any kind of things that you used to sort of messages you used to give yourself, what you wanted to do to get involved with the game? Or
not in general, but when I there was one game in particular where Keith had offered me a 2-year contract, and I said to him, "No, Keith, I just give me one." I said, "But promise me that you'll play me if there's an injury and I can replace him. Put me in." And he did. He promised. And then we played West Ham at White Hart Lane, and they beat us 4-0. David Cross got 4 goals, and I thought I blew my opportunity then. And I was brave to only take a 1-year contract, but the second game, to be true to his word, Keith put me in the next chance he had against Notts Forest at White Hart Lane. And I remember thinking, right, okay, Mick, you blew your first chance. This is the chance you've got to take. You got to get this game by the scruff of the neck, and you got to go for it. And so, you too many times in my early days, for instance, when we took the kick off, the ball would be rolled back to Glenn or rolled back to Ozzy. And I remember before the game saying, right, there's no way in the world that ball's gone back to Glenn or it's gone back to Ozzy. It's coming back to me, and I'm going to get an early touch, and I'm going to do something good with it. First thing to set me up for the rest of the game. So I positioned myself. Archibald and Crooks were taking the free kick. Was it Archibald and Crooks? No, it wasn't Archibald and Crooks. Who was it? Jerry Armstrong, I think. I can't remember the team. But I positioned myself 3 or 4 yards away from whoever took the kick off so that the ball couldn't go to Glenn or Ozzy.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, it was Archibald and Crooks. So the ball couldn't go to Glenn or Ozzy. No, it was Archibald and Falco. Sorry, it was Archibald and Falco because Falco got 2 goals that day. And I positioned myself in a spot whereby the ball was coming to me, come what may. And it just set me up for, I had a great game. I scored, I made 2 goals, I got man of the match. And from that moment on, I played 45 games that season. So
awesome.
I did.
What did you do with that first touch then? It sounds like a hell of a touch.
To be honest, it wasn't my normal standards. But I beat 13 players, pinged a 40-yard shot, hit the bar.
Turned around to the manager and said, "That's how you start a game of football."
I was someone who liked to run with the ball and attack players. So when I got the first touch, I think I attacked someone, I beat someone, and then passed it. And then later on in the game, obviously my confidence up was for dribbling, my confidence passing. Not that I lacked confidence, but it was up. Then Ozzy rolled me the ball in. I beat 3 players, pinged a 40-yard cross-field pass to Glenn Hoddle. He volleyed it back to Mark Falco across the goal. He volleyed it in the net.
I remember the goal, yeah.
So
yeah,
that start sort of initiated everything that I did later in the game.
You thought to yourself, here I am now. I'm going to entertain you for the next 8 years. Yeah. We mentioned Brian Clough there, so I'd be remiss of us not to ask, have you got any Brian Clough stories, any run-ins with Cloughie over the years?
No run-ins, but when I was 16, right, I loved him. I absolutely loved him. I thought he was a brilliant manager. And when I was 16, Spurs were playing Notts Forest, and obviously as a 16-year-old, you had to go to all the games. You had to help clean the dressing rooms, etc., etc. I was standing outside I had the away team dressing room this day, and Clough came in with his team. And I had a programme, and I was thinking, I could get his autograph. So I went up to him and I said, "Mr. Clough, could I have your autograph, please?" He said, "Hello, young man." I said, "Hello, Mr. Clough." He said, "Do you work here?" I said, "No, Brian, I'm a player here." He said, "So you work here then?" I thought, typical Mr. Clough, me sort of separating myself from working and playing, and he says, "Oh, so you work here then?" I think that sort of summed up how Cloughie thought. He was brilliant.
Yeah, so quick, wasn't he, on his feet? So quick on his feet. I guess you must have played against his teams a few times over the years.
Yes, on numerous occasions, and I think he quite liked me as well, which was nice. It's nice when a man of such esteem likes the way that you play the game. That sometimes is as good as it gets. When you hear someone, like when Ozzy Ardiles used to fight my corner for me, that meant more than someone in the press saying what a great player I was.
Yeah.
If Ozzy Ardiles was fighting my corner, or Brian Clough was saying what a good player Micky Hazard is, that meant more to me than getting a 9 out of 10 in the paper.
I think Cloughie was a good judge of character, wasn't he, Micky? So
I think he was a good judge of talent.
About right. Yeah, he was.
He was a very good judge of talent. He liked the type of players that I liked. We often raved about Glenn Hoddle. So anybody that raves about Glenn Hoddle obviously knows his stuff, I think. I sort of played the game the way Glenn played it, and Cloughie used to like me. So, yeah, he was a brilliant judge.
Yeah.
He must have been rated me.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. What was your best and your favourite goal that you scored for Spurs? Best technically, and the one that meant the most to you because of the occasion, kind of thing.
Well, the best goal that I ever scored for Spurs, unfortunately, never got it was on TV, but I think that we wore Arsenal wore advertising that day, so it never got shown on TV. I scored a goal at Highbury in a 3-1 win, and I beat 3 players from the halfway line and smacked one in from 25 yards into the top corner. It was a wonderful goal. It was a worldie. But as time's passed, when it happened, I picked the ball up off Ricky Villa. I beat the first player, beat the second player, and John Hollands, who comes sliding in. I went to shoot, and he slid in, and I just moved it to the side of him, and then smacked it in from 25 yards. But now that was sort of 30 years, 35 years, whatever it was down the line. I picked it up on our goal line. I did a drag back and a nutmeg. I beat 14 players, chipped the keeper from 40 yards. It hit the crossbar, came back out to me on the edge of the box, and I volleyed it into the top corner.
A few Croydon turns along the way. Do you remember how you celebrated in front of the Gooner fans as well? Did you give it the finger, or just like?
I don't have not one solitary memory of celebrating it. You know, guys, I'm going to shock you here. Sometimes you score a goal, right? And it can be a tap in or it can be a wonder goal. And you run away celebrating. And you don't know till you've got home and watched it on TV what you've done. You're so lost in the moment. The moment's imagine you're a fan and you see me score that goal at Highbury where I beat 3 players and put it in the top 20. You lose yourself. You're jumping up and down and celebrating like, oh yeah, it's wonderful. And it's the same as a player. You lose your mind for 20, 30 seconds. You really don't know what you're doing. Some do. If you score loads and loads and loads of goals, then it becomes secondary. You can remember everything. But when you score a worldie and it's your first North London derby, you just run away, you celebrate, no idea what you're doing. And then when you get
is it just being lost in the moment?
Hey?
Is it just being like lost in that moment?
Yeah, you're just lost. That's, like I said, the greatest feeling in football for any player, I suppose, with regard to playing, not the old picture, but with regard to playing, the greatest feeling is when you put the ball in the back of the net. You really lose yourself for 20 seconds. And I've seen goals that I've scored and my celebration, I think, what a dickhead, why did I do that? You actually have no idea you've done it. I mean, I remember one day I run away and I was doing this little silly action with my hands and I was thinking, what the fuck was I doing there?
Where's that come from?
It looked absolutely, it was embarrassing. And I thought, God, I must remember never to do that again.
And then
did you actually
score again
against us once, Mick? When you was playing for Chelsea, did you actually score against us once?
2 in one game. Yeah, I scored 2
in one game.
In a 3-1 win at White Hart Lane. I scored 2. And I was interviewed on the radio afterwards. No, you can imagine for any player going from Spurs to Chelsea, it's very, very difficult. The Chelsea fans are no way in the world going to accept you. They're going to, until you've earned their acceptance, I suppose. But when we played Spurs at White Hart Lane, I scored 2 goals. It was my first visit back. And I was interviewed on the radio at the end of the game. And the commentator said to me, it must have felt amazing to go back to the club you joined as a schoolboy, who sold you to prove them wrong. And I said, well, not really. I said, it actually felt like I scored 2 own goals. It did, because you have to remember, and what people fail to remember is that, in my mind, I joined Spurs when I was 11, when the scout first scouted me. And when he first told me that, he guarantees me an apprenticeship at Spurs if I sign for them. So, when you go from the age of 11 and you are then sort of fed into the football club, you're then brought up on the history and the traditions and the philosophies of that football club. You then break through into the first team. You then become part of a very successful period of that football club. It's very difficult to accept anything else as an equal. So that was all I'd ever known in football, was Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. And suddenly to be sort of cast aside, if you like, and suddenly playing for another club. The first year that I spent at that with the football club was wishing that I was back at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, because
it's part of your very being, isn't it?
I don't mean to slur Chelsea by saying that, but it was more to do with the fact that I'd known nothing but Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. Tottenham Hotspur Football Club and Micky Hazard were like chemistry together, because we both thought the same. We both had the same philosophies. To dare us to do or dare us to say these things were the way I viewed things. So anything different to that was strange. So making the comment on radio that I made, it wasn't a surprise to me, because that's genuinely how I felt at that particular moment. As time passed and Tottenham didn't re-sign me, then you start to accept that, well, I've got to move on. I've got to stop dreaming of getting a move back, and accept I'm no longer there, and then do the best for my new football club, which I did. And in fairness to the Chelsea fans, they absolutely adored me. They treated me like I was a king. They treated me the way Spurs fans treat Glenn Hoddle. So, I will never forget them, and it's no slur on them that I love Tottenham Hotspur Football Club.
Just part of you, isn't it, Micky?
It's a bit like Andros Townsend.
You can't, when you go through life, you can't choose who you fall in love with. It happens. Someone once said to me, "What does Tottenham Hotspur Football Club mean to you?" And I sort of read something similar to what I'm about to say. I don't know how similar it is. I can't remember exactly what I said, but what does Tottenham Hotspur? Well, and I sort of said, well, listen, somewhere, somehow, sometime, I've no idea why, I found myself in a place where I was lost. I was totally lost. And I looked around me, and here I was. I was back home. I was at White Hart Lane, and it just felt like home, Somehow it just happened, and I fell in love with Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. I didn't have any control over that. It happens. Like I said, you can't control who you fall in love with. And to this day, I work at Tottenham Hotspur on match days, and it's the greatest job I've ever had. Even better than playing, and the reason it's better than playing, because now I'm a fan, and now I get to mix every week with the fans. I get to celebrate the Tottenham goals with the fans. I get to be sad and curse and swear when we lose or when we play crap with the fans, and that for me is a job that, if someone told me when I was playing that one day in the not too distant future I'm going to be employed by Spurs, sort of doing this role, I wouldn't have believed how great the role could be. But it truly is. It's actually, I'm not sure anything can replace being a player, but if anything can, this is it. This is the job that I would choose for myself for the rest of my life.
To be surrounded by your own.
We do seem to generate affection from our previous players. I mean, what you just described there, Micky, is similar to, I don't know if you saw Andros Townsend. It wasn't recently. It was I think it was a couple of years ago. He scored for Palace against us. Yeah, and a Palace fan criticised him on social media. Obviously, wasn't around at that time, but it was then for him. And he turned around and said, "Well, why didn't you celebrate scoring against Spurs?" Like, what, score against? Yeah, and I think they sort of criticised his record. And he turned around and said, "I was there since I was 8 years old. I played 200 and something games for them. It's ridiculous for me to have turned around and celebrated against them, because similar to yourself, it would have felt wrong to have done that." So I think we seem to generate that. There's a lot of players like yourselves that seem to just fall in love with the club. I don't know if that's true of other clubs, but certainly for us, loads of different players have said how much they love the club.
it is. And like you, I can't speak for the football clubs because I don't know how their players feel about their football clubs. But I obviously mingle with lots of our former players, lots. And I have to say that while they might not be as open about their feelings for the football club, in other words, they might not talk about it in depth or why or what they feel. Trust me, I know for a fact that certainly the players that I played with in my era absolutely love our football club. The Ozzy Ardiles, the Glenn Oddles, the Mark Falcos, the Paul Millers, the Graham Robertses, the Tony Parkses, the Stevie Perrimans, the Chris Hutons, these types of players. They absolutely love Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, and I can I put my finger on why? Well, if I knew how footballers from other football clubs felt about their teams, maybe I could put my finger on it. But it's difficult without knowing how other players feel. But I have to say that there's something very special about Tottenham, and you know, my one wish. There's two things in life. If I had two wishes, you know, from a footballing perspective, of course, and from a life perspective, if I had two wishes, one, I would wish that every child on this earth, every child would get to go and see Disney World. And that's not because I think Disney is wonderful or Disney is it, but I think the moment that you walk through the gates at Magic Kingdom, you feel, even as an adult, when I went for the first time, I felt nothing but joy and happiness. And I think every child on earth should experience that joy and happiness of that moment when you walk through Disney World and you see everything that you've watched on TV. So I wish for every child that they could experience that moment. But also from a footballing point of view, I wish that every fan could experience walking up the tunnel on a match day and coming out of the tunnel to glory. If every fan could experience scoring a goal on the turf of White Hart Lane, I think that, you know, I love Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, but I love it from a point of view that I've had an inside education of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. I've experienced walking up the tunnel to glory. I've experienced scoring winning goals in semi-finals at White Hart Lane. I've experienced all the highs that being a footballer with Spurs brings you. The adulation, the great nights, the great trophies, the this, the that. So from my point of view, my love for Spurs has grown and been borne out by the fact that I've done all of these incredible things. When you look at it from the opposite side of the fence, which is from the from the fans' perspective, fans, for instance, are year in, year out, totally and utterly out of the pocket to the tune of thousands of pounds. Yet they travel near, far, everywhere they go, everywhere Spurs go, they go. And they have an unconditional love for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, not borne out by the fact they've scored a winning goal in the semi-final, not borne out by the fact that they've got to walk up the tunnel to glory, not borne out by the fact that they can sit next to Glenn Oddle or Ozzy Ardiles or Harry Kane, not borne out by the fact that they get to train with them, play with them and do things with them, that they do it because they love Tottenham Hotspur Football Club unconditionally. And I think that is the greatest love of all for football. You know, I wouldn't begin to compare my love for Spurs to the Tottenham fans because mine's biased and based on everything that I've done at the football club, all the glory things that I did. Whereas fans, they live through the good times, the bad times, and as Graham Roberts once said, the name on the back of the shirt is nowhere near as big as the emblem on the front of the shirt. And it's so true. And from a fan's perspective, fans are football. Football cannot survive without fans. And not just at Tottenham Hotspur, but at Halifax Town or York City or Falkirk or whoever. The football fans is what keeps football alive. And as I've said, they do it unconditionally, knowing that supporting a football club is going to bring them more heartache than glory, and it's going to cost them a lot more money than any returns they're ever going to get. So their love is just absolutely staggering, really.
Someone said to me once, Mickey, it's the only constant you have in your whole life, isn't it? Your parents come and go, your pets come and go, your girlfriends, your wives come and go, but your football club's there on your whole journey
I'm not
for your life.
about that. I've only had 14 wives. They don't come and go.
Henry, should we call you Henry VIII or Mickey VIII? Did you chop all their heads off though, Mickey, or not?
Don't tell anyone, but yeah.
Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. Fell off a bridge. Ran away.
Bringing things back to the questions, a few more, Mickey, before we let you go. We've taken up a lot of your time tonight, so we much
really
appreciate it. So,
thank you.
And your answers have been absolutely brilliant. So I wish I could ask you questions for another 4 hours, but we're mindful of your time. So, what would you say was your best performance in a Spurs shirt? Were you in the zone, as sportsmen just famously describe it? Did you have one of those games where everything you tried came off? And
loads.
Great answer.
No, I've had very poor games. I've had great games, but there's some things that again surpassed the individual great performance. Sometimes more important than playing great is when you have to look deep within your soul to find your best form. When you know that there's nowhere else to go. There's nowhere to hide. You need to find everything and more that you search for. I think when you deliver a performance under those circumstances, when the pressure is at its greatest and the rewards are at its greatest, I think that performance stands out above all. When I look back at the UEFA Cup final over the 2 legs, no Glenn Hoddle, no Ozzy Ardiles, no Garth Crooks, no Ray Clements, no Gary Mabbott, 90% fit. Sorry, 70% fit. Steve Perryman, no Steve Perryman. 5-6 potential regulars in your first team that would play in the UEFA Cup final if they were all fit. And you've got young boys coming in to replace them. And you know that the onus is on you as sort of almost Glenn and Ozzy's lieutenant, their right and men. And you know that you are possibly the key to winning the cup or not. Somebody has to take a grip of the game. Somebody has to control the game. Somebody has to find a way to bring the cup back home to White Hart Lane. I would have to say that over those 2 legs was my greatest ever performance. Because when you need to find a performance, when you are under the greatest amount of pressure and there's nowhere to run or hide, and you search deep within your soul and you deliver, then that for me must rank, if not the most exciting or most the most flair or the most creative, but the greatest performance because it was
the character and bravery that you showed.
Exactly. At the very time that you need to deliver, you deliver. That for me stands out above all. I've had incredibly good performances where I did all the things that I believe the game was about, and in the UEFA Cup final I did too. But over the 2 legs, I just remember finishing the game thinking, "Wow, Mick!" I got a phone call as I was in the dressing room at the end of the game. Right now, you can imagine you're celebrating just winning the UEFA Cup. The phone rings. Keith Birkinshaw answers the phone. Right, you can't get through the dressing room at any time. But someone from Sunderland, from my past, a butcher, believe it or not, who I used to go in and shop for my mum and dad. The butcher had got through to the dressing room, and Keith says, "Mickey, it's for you." Like in the middle of celebrating the UEFA Cup final win. And I picked the phone up and I said, "Oh," he said, "Mickey, it's Eric." I said, "Eric who?" He said, "Eric Robson, the butcher." I said, "Eric," I said, "How are you, mate?" He said, "Mickey, he said, I had to ring you." He said, "You were unbelievable." He said, "You were unbelievable." He said, "What a performance you put on tonight." He said, "It was brilliant." He said, I mean, Christ almighty, to get through to the dressing room, and it sort of made me think, wow, yeah, he's right, to my greatest performance at the very time that I needed it. I don't need it when I'm 4-0 up. When you're 4-0 up, anybody can do the business. It's easy. Your team's cruising and cantering, and everybody wants the ball, and everybody's arrogant and cocky. But when your back's to the wall and you need to find a performance, that's when it counts. Yeah, no, that's the one that gives me the most pleasure, the most pride.
That's a nice touch as well that someone from your hometown managed to
Incredible.
get hold of you at that moment as well. Yeah.
Yeah. When Keith said it, you can imagine me. Keith said, it's for you. What? Me? I got on the phone and he said, "It's Eric." He said, "Eric the butcher." Can you imagine that?
Lovely.
Yeah. I don't mean to interrupt your social life, Mickey, but it's for you.
But I was quite proud of you tonight, Mickey.
Honestly, it was amazing.
Last couple of questions then, Mickey. Do you remember? What do you remember about your final game for Spurs? And did you know it's going to be your last game for Spurs ahead of the game?
I remember my final game in my first stint. We played Newcastle at White Hart Lane. We won 5-1. I scored. Celebrating in the players' lounge with all the boys, and Pete Shreves, who was manager, I'd only just been picked for England at the end of the previous season when we won the UEFA Cup. And Pete Shreves called me out of the players' lounge and said, "Look, Mickey, Irving Skull has accepted an offer of Chelsea for you. He's also said if you don't leave, you won't play again." So that was heartbreaking.
So you didn't.
Yeah, I'll never forget that moment.
Yeah.
And then my final game. It's a tough one to remember. My very final game. I think it was Blackburn away in a 2-0 defeat. Ozzy had been sacked. Steve Perryman was caretaker manager. And I remember thinking, well, I'm 35. Any new manager coming in is not going to build the team around me. So it's probably the end of my career at Spurs. And obviously they appointed Jerry Francis, who had his way of doing things wasn't very appealing to me. On Tuesday, and you probably heard, the Tuesdays, every single week they did this running session that was just
Terror Tuesday, wasn't it, or something like that?
Yeah, I can't remember the word that we used to use, but it was. We used to make young boys physically sick all over the pitch, and it really was horrendous. And at 35 years of age, it's not exactly what I need. And unfortunately for me, that, you know, we did this running on the Tuesday, but on the Wednesday, there was a reserve game, and Jerry put me in the team. So you can imagine the soreness and stiffness from the Tuesday running session.
Yeah.
And in the 60th minute of the game, I tore my hamstring. I come back from that after about 7 weeks. And my first training session back, someone went through me in training. I did my knee ligaments. So unfortunately for me, you know, at a time when I should have been trying to impress Jerry, I picked up a couple of injuries that sort of didn't allow me to impress him.
Yeah.
And then I got fit again, and I just didn't enjoy it. These running sessions were doing my brains in. And I was struggling to get myself in peak shape.
Yeah.
So I made the decision to retire. So I went to see Jerry. Look, Jerry, I'm going to retire. I can't really get over the injuries. I think I did my hamstring again. And I was offered a 2-year contract by Birmingham. Barry Fry on good money. But I thought, no. I've started out my career at Spurs, and I'm going to finish my career at Spurs, and that's it. I'm not going to go anywhere else. That's it. I'm retiring because this is where I began. This is where I finished. And I retired that day. Did I leave happy? No, I was really unhappy. It was like a massive wrench. But it was funny because 6 months later, I'd not trained. I'd not done a thing. And the FA Cup came round, the FA Cup third round. And I think Birmingham were drawn against Middlesbrough. And in about 3 months after I retired, I was asked to play in a testimonial at Southend. And Barry Fry was managing the team that I played for in this testimonial. It was a mix of, you know, players. And I absolutely played incredible on this day. Barry Fry in the dressing room at the end of the game, he said, "You lot, you're all still playing." He said, "The best player on the pitch by a million miles was Micky Hazard," right? And then 3 months later, having not trained or kicked the ball since, the phone rings. It's Barry Fry. He said, "Micky, I want you to come and play. We're playing Middlesbrough in the FA Cup. I want you to come and play for us." I said, "Barry, I've not trained for 6 months, man." I said, "All I've had is that one game again in the testimonial." I said, "I've not done a thing." I said, "I've put a stone on them weight. I don't give a damn. I want you playing at Middlesbrough for me." I said, "Nah, Barry, I couldn't do that to you." I said, "There's a difference playing in a testimonial." He wanted to sign me. I hadn't even trained to put on a stone in weight. I hadn't trained for 6 months. It's ridiculous. And I thought, no, I can't let him down. So I didn't sign. So I started at Spurs and finished at Spurs.
Perfect end to the circle, wasn't it? Perfect end to the story.
Still at Spurs now.
Still at Spurs now, yeah.
Absolutely.
So the last little piece, one for the youngsters out there who are still playing, and the old gits like me who are still playing. What's the best piece of advice you received from a coach or fellow player during your playing career that you think every young player should take on board?
Well, I suppose any advice that you're going to give someone needs to be related to the position that they play. Because the best advice I got wouldn't be something that you would say to a big strapping centre-back. But the best advice that I got that I would give to any young player trying to break into the game would be the advice that Glenn Hoddle gave me. He said, "Micky, never do the same thing twice." What do you mean, Glenn? Well, when you're out on the pitch, you're playing against top-class footballers. If you drop your shoulder to go to the right and then change direction, go to the left, you'll catch him out. But the second time you won't, because he's a top player. That's why he's a top player. He said, so the next time, drop your shoulder to go to the right, and then drop to go to the left, and then go back to the right. He said, so you're always changing what you're doing.
What you do.
So you keep him from knowing, and he's having to guess what you're doing. The minute he can anticipate and read what you're doing is when you are going to fail, because he's going to be there waiting for you. So that was a great piece of advice for the type of player that I was, never to do the same thing twice. The other piece of advice, which again is related to confidence and belief, I said to Gary Mabbott, I said, Mabsy, I've watched you, I've played with you, and I've watched you for years and years and years. I said, and I never, ever, ever once saw you lose confidence. He said, nope, I never did. I said, why did you never lose confidence? I said, because you must have had bad runs where you were having a bad game or bad time. He said, I never lost confidence. He said, because I gave myself 1,000 mistakes every game before I would lose confidence. So I said, but Mabs, I said, you'd never have the ball 1,000 times in a game. He said, exactly. He said, exactly. He said, so I never lost confidence. Which I thought was a great outlook, and basically what we touched on about Dele Alli earlier is playing without fear, and what Glenn did when he give the ball away 10 times and then produce that incredible chip. Never lose confidence or belief just because you give the ball away or it fails, because the next one it might just get there. It might just be the difference between winning and losing. And I thought those two pieces of advice were two brilliant pieces of advice. One for my kind of player who played with flair and creativity, and two for anybody who says, give myself 1,000 mistakes before I lose confidence, because you're never going to make 1,000 mistakes.
That's brilliant.
Maybe that's where I've been going wrong, Mickey. If I try a pass or something and it doesn't come off, I try and play safe for the next 5 minutes. With safe.
Some people do, and some people will advocate that that's the correct way. Yeah. You give the ball away once, you give the ball away twice. Go right back to basics and keep it simple to rebuild before you try another difficult pass. Yeah. Now you speak to Glenn Oddle and he would say, no, if the right pass is that 50-yard slice, backspin, topspin into someone's run, if that's
I've got that in my locker.
And you've failed 10 times out of 10, you've still got to do it the 11th time because it's the right pass. Do what's right, not what boosts your confidence.
I'll try that. So, Mickey, I'm sure the guys on the panel here, before we let you go, I think they've got a question each to ask you. Rez, if you could share some of the love from the audience today at the bottom there whilst we're getting the questions from you guys, so Mickey can see some of the comments about how everyone's loving his appearance tonight, give him some of the love. Alan, did you want to ask Mickey a question first?
Yeah, Mickey, when you was a young lad playing in Sunderland, did you actually, at the time, was you dreaming of playing for Sunderland, or it was just a case of Spurs coming too early to make you even give you that decision?
It's a very good question, because I was I didn't sort of go to Sunderland football matches because I was too busy. All my friends did and all my mates, but I wanted to play. I didn't want to go and watch. So I was continuously out playing while they were all at football, which probably explains why I got where I got and why they didn't. But no, I think that the main thing was that the Spurs scout had scouted me so young. You don't really have a time to, or you don't understand why you should or you shouldn't follow a football club just because it's your hometown. But at the age of 11, Spurs were into me. Spurs became my club. So it wasn't that I chose to support Spurs. It was that it happened as a consequence of being scouted for them from such a young age. But that's why I didn't support Sunderland.
Cheers, mate.
Made the wise choice, Mickey, straight into Spurs, and they've been with us ever since. Well, I say that you supported Spurs before me, so I don't need to give you permission.
Not before me though. I beat him.
No, not before you, Alan. Not before you. Yeah. Rez, have you got a question for Mickey?
My question was the Brian Clough one, so that's been answered already. So my thanks for that.
If you'd like to carry on working your way through the comments, then, and I'll pass you on to Nick here. Nick, have you got a question for the illustrious Mr. Hazard?
just what was it like for playing that Legends game, the first game at the new White Hart Lane? Because I mean, when I walked down the steps and kind of out onto the pitch, for me that was, you know, I was kind of almost in tears. So it'd be interesting to how you, from playing at the lane and the you know, playing at the new White Hart Lane, what was it like?
When I got the phone call to ask if I would play, you know, obviously I was 25 years older than some of them that I was playing against. Was I ever going to say no? No. The excitement that I felt was about playing was incredible. So what I did was I trained incredibly hard. I mean, as hard as a 59-year-old could train. I was really super fit. But then the game got cancelled because the stadium wasn't ready. And then I got a message saying that the game doesn't look like it's going to be played anymore. So I stopped training. And then I got a phone call 2 weeks before the game saying, Mick, that game's back on. Oh, God. So I had to have 2 weeks of physically demanding training to try and get myself in some sort of shape. Was I going to turn it down? Not a chance. So the whole day was incredible. I then, obviously, I was on the bench sub. I got brought on with about 30 minutes to play. I was playing against Verona, who played in the Champions League final sort of not too long ago. Did it hold any fear for me? No. I honestly dreamt about this moment. I dreamt that I was going to put one in the top corner. I dreamt everything that I dreamt when you're a little boy wanting to achieve, scoring the winning goal in the cup. All these dreams were coming through my head. I then, unfortunately for me, in the last minute of the game, snapped my Achilles, which put me out of action for 6 months. I was on a wheelchair for 4 of them. And many people, from fans to former players to all say to me, do you regret playing? Do I regret playing? And if you could turn the clock back, would you change it? Would I change it? I do not regret playing. And if I could turn the clock back and know what I know now, that I would have snapped my Achilles and been out of action for 7 months, would I change it? Not a chance.
No chance.
That moment, that day, that moment, you know, at the end of the game, hobbling around the pitch, doing a lap of honour with the fans singing and waving, you know, it was on a par with the UEFA Cup semi-final, the UEFA Cup final. It was incredible to experience playing on that pitch one more time. It might never, ever happen again. Nobody knows. You know, walking up the tunnel, I always say, every time I walk up the tunnel, I get emotional because I never know whether I'm ever going to do it again. So when you get an opportunity like that, doesn't matter how it goes, doesn't matter what happened, never say no and never regret it, because it was magical to hear the roar, to hear the fans, to be part on the pitch when Berbatov scored the equaliser to make it 4-4, celebrating with the boys, celebrating with the fans. It was just something else. And no, I wouldn't change a thing about it. And if I could relive it all again, I'd relive it, including the 7 months recovery.
Brilliant. Try and sneak in for Hugo's testimonial then.
Yeah. I'm not sure Hugo would select me now. I'm a bit a little bit more heavy than I was then.
We've got the Ben Davies testimonial first, Nick.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm a bit disappointed, to be honest, because I thought that you were going to say Conte might pick me for Saturday.
We do need some creativity in the midfield, don't we?
We need some creativity.
We do, and I'm just about ready as well, and I've still got my boots.
Johnny, we've got a couple of questions from viewers.
Okay,
I don't know if are you up for answering a couple, Micky?
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. So this from Simon, who runs a channel called Premier Hotspur TV. Hi guys, great show and great legend. And Micky, did you play against my uncle Alan Devonshire in your time?
Yes. What a good player he was. Little twat.
Yeah, West Ham money. West Ham.
Unfortunately, he played for West Ham.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because he would have been a good Spurs player. He was a very, very, very good player. He was exciting. He was creative. Played with a lot of flair. Played against them on numerous occasions. Obviously, he played for West Ham, so I always considered West Ham a 6-pointer anyway, because I never felt they were ever a threat. But Alan was a very, very good player.
He manages one of our local teams, Simon, as well. Tame United, I think he's been there for a fair few years. Yeah.
Coach, does them.
Yeah.
So Kim's asking me not to read this one out, but I can't not. I'm sorry, Kim. So she says, not that I endorse violence, but are there any members of the current team Mickey thinks he couldn't have in a fight?
I couldn't have in a fight.
Yeah.
From the current team? What, a fist fight?
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Take them all.
and twice on Sundays, yeah. Take them all
That's
twice
at
on
the same
Sunday.
time.
Yeah.
I think my passion and desire would win through.
Absolutely.
Well, in them days, you used to play with passion, Mickey. Now they play for Wonga.
You had to. If you didn't, they'd kick you around the park.
Yeah, well, yeah, I watched it.
The one thing about, listen, professional football, if you can't look after yourself, then you're not going to make it as a professional footballer. You've got to have a streak inside of you. And it doesn't mean that away from the pitch, you have that same streak. Because my motto in life is to be kind. Kindness is one of the greatest things that we will ever give to someone, but also ever receive. So that's my motto in life. But on the football pitch, I sometimes I could be really arrogant because I needed to be, because I needed to say, look, you can't get this ball off of me. Because the minute I say sometimes I used to wear socks down, no pads. I used to wear my shirt out because it gave me a feeling of arrogance that you can't get this ball. You might think you can, but I know you can't. I needed that in my head to give me an edge. And so if you ain't got that edge, whether it be that was my edge, but someone like Graham Roberts his edge would be, I'm physically stronger than you. I can out fight you, I can outwork you, and I can out chase you, and I can out tackle you. Those would be the edges that he would want to give himself. So, you have to play with passion, desire, and more importantly, belief and brains.
Speaking of that kindness, Mickey, we would appreciate you coming on tonight, and
Really?
you don't understand how much it means to us fans to sort of interact with a player such as yourself. I remember during the AVB days, there was a period where everyone was feeling disconnected from the club, and I listened to I think you were on the Spurs show, and it just completely re-energized my love for the club. And I ended up sending it to my brother and Gaza, who all watched the club, because we were all feeling really disconnected. And just to thank you for that passion that you've got. It's so enthusiastic that it kind of reignited all of our passions. I sent it to everyone I know, and they really loved it, and they like listening to you. The enthusiasm and the love that you spoke for the club as well, it kind of reignited all of our love. So thank you very much for that, Mickey.
Hey, it's easy for me to do. It's not hard. I mean, if you talk about your children, for instance, you talk about your children with love, with passion. You care. You want them to succeed. You want the very, very best for them. So it's easy to look at Tottenham as very, very much the same way, because it's, don't forget that I've been at this club for 40 years. 40 years, that's a heck of a long time. It's 2/3 of my life that I've spent in some capacity working for this football club. If you don't have a love and an allegiance for this football club after 40 years, then you will never have it, And for me, it's the best club in the world.
It was just a great reminder that someone that played for us could share that love that we share for the club, because at the time those players, they didn't really they weren't really performing, they weren't showing any kind of love for the club at all. So it's great to see that it had endured in you for so many years, and that you'd all the love that we'd given you, you'd been able to give it back to us. Is like a perfect circle, isn't it? To keep us going, to keep our faith going again after. Yeah,
it's a great description in that, when you're a player, and it's something that I'd like to remind the modern day players about also, because I feel that modern day players genuinely miss out on the very best thing about being a professional footballer. The very best thing about being a professional footballer is you get to bring joy to many, many people, and the many, many people, they idolize and worship you for that. And then later in life, you get to give back everything that you received to the very people that made you who you are. And I wish that modern day footballers would have the time to appreciate and mingle and interact with the very people that make them who they are.
Absolutely. Did you want to promote one of your events? I know you've got an event is it Peterborough coming up? I'll put it on the screen.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm not here to promote anything. I'm here to enjoy my time with the fans. So I'm not gonna talk about my event because I feel like I'm not here for an ulterior motive. I'm here to enjoy
can we talk about it?
Yeah, we can talk about it though. Yeah,
you can, but I'm not going to promote it because I've had a wonderful time mixing with you, interacting and everything, and that's why I'm here. I'm not here to sell one of my events.
And that's why you're a legend. That's why you're a legend.
Yeah.
It has been an absolute joy to have you. Thank you so much for coming on. It
and
really
I haven't got to ask you any questions in April. Nothing at all, really, have I?
There's a lot more. Don't worry. There's a lot more.
Okay.
April 27th, you and me, we're going to.
That's only if you can keep up my scooter.
And I'm going to show you every part of that pitch where I did what I did.
That's only if you can keep up with me on my scooter.
A little birdie tells us it's your birthday soon, isn't it, Mickey? Alan says it's your birthday soon, is it?
3 days time.
It's my birthday on Saturday.
Yep. On Saturday, yeah.
So that's what led
I can't believe it. Time
flies. As a little tribute to your birthday, and to thank you for coming on tonight, we'll play you out with the video that we made for you earlier. Thanks for everyone viewing tonight. Thank Mickey, more importantly, thank you for your time and sharing some of your time on planet Earth with us. We appreciate it immensely, and you don't know how much it means to us to get you on here. And you've been a top man. Your stories have been brilliant. We could talk for another 2.5 hours. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure and a joy, and hopefully everyone enjoyed the show. And one day, invite me back.
Absolutely, mate. You're welcome back here anytime. Absolutely. If anyone's watching would like to like and subscribe, you know how to click the buttons and whatnot, and we'll play Mickey out. Happy birthday, Mickey, with your little song.
Come on, you spare.